Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a deeply unglamorous, highly technical piece of hardware that has suddenly found itself at the absolute center of a massive geopolitical standoff. We hear about AI models all day long, but today, we're looking at the physical foundation that makes literally all of it possible.
Now, you might assume the biggest fight in global tech right now is over those advanced chips or massive new language models, right? But as we're about to see, the real battle lines are being drawn over something much more unexpected.
It's not the chips, it's the plumbing. We're focusing on a piece of digital plumbing so invisible that most people have never even heard of it, and frankly, there's been no reason you should have. It's this tiny part buried deep inside massive data centers, just quietly doing its job. Yet this single little component is moving global stock markets right now, and that's before these new trade rules have even been officially written.
So, let's kick things off with Section 1, the invisible AI plumbing.
To really understand the stakes here, we have to look at how this tiny component actually functions. Meet the optical transceiver. It's a small gadget that converts electrical signals into light and back again, which allows data to blast through fiber optic cables at extreme speeds. Now, it doesn't train AI models and it doesn't calculate complex algorithms. It simply acts as the essential physical bridge, moving enormous, mind-boggling volumes of data between servers. But without it, the high speeds required to keep an AI data center running just wouldn't exist. It is the literal definition of critical infrastructure.
Moving right along to Section 2, the real security threat.
You see, that just plumbing quality is exactly why the Trump administration and the FCC are proposing a ban on U.S. imports of new, Chinese-made optical transceivers by the end of 2026. Officials are arguing that a compromised component sitting deep inside a data center's networking layer, which is exactly where enormous amounts of sensitive data physically pass through, poses a genuinely critical security risk. We're not talking about a theoretical problem here. Because this component touches the data as it moves, officials have cited very real concerns about data theft, malware installation, and potential service disruption. It's a major vulnerability placed exactly at the bottleneck of the entire data flow.
And this isn't some isolated event. It's part of a much larger playbook. You know, Congress created the FCC's covered list to bar foreign equipment that poses national security risks. Over the past year alone, they've added drones, routers, and power inverters. More recently, robots made the list. And now, proposed for the end of 2026, optical transceivers. So what we're looking at is a steady, calculated escalation aimed specifically at the infrastructure layer supporting AI.
Which brings us to Section 3, market winners and losers.
Let's take a look at how violently global investors reacted to this drafted, unwritten rule. When Reuters first broke the report of the proposed ban, investors treated it as a genuine, tradable signal. Boom. U.S.-based alternatives saw sharp surges. Applied Optoelectronics shot up roughly 18%. Coherent jumped about 11%, and Lumentum gained around 7%. Meanwhile, the major Chinese manufacturer Zhongji Inolite faced a massive 14% drop before finally paring some of those losses. Basically, the market instantly picked its anticipated winners and losers.
Now, why did the market react with such force against that specific company? Well, it comes down to one single number: 27%. That is the chunk of the entire global optical transceiver market currently held by Zhongji Inolite. Since the proposed rule targets new imports of Chinese-made models, this massive market share is suddenly looking highly vulnerable.
It is also crucial context to note that this security concern didn't just pop up overnight. Actually, Zhongji Inolite was already added to the Pentagon's list of Chinese military-backed companies back in June, months prior to this public proposal. Washington has been watching this space and this specific company for quite some time.
Let's dive into Section 4, the supply chain catch.
For cloud infrastructure giants, think AWS and the like, a ban means a forced, high-cost transition to domestic or allied suppliers. But here is the major contradiction that nobody has fully resolved yet. For the highest bandwidth AI transceivers, the exact ones needed for the absolute newest, most advanced AI data centers, Zhongji Inolite and another Chinese manufacturer, Optical, control more than 60% of this highly specialized market. You can't just replace that volume overnight. Industry analysts estimate it's going to take a realistic ramp-up window of 12 to 24 months before Western manufacturers could scale up enough to meaningfully cover that massive 60% gap.
But honestly, worse than that 12 to 24-month time delay is what we're calling the indium phosphide twist. This is the twisted reality of the raw materials required to actually build these U.S. replacements.
You see, Western replacements require a specific substrate to manufacture competing transceivers. It's called indium phosphide. And here is the catch. That raw material is subject to Chinese export licensing controls. In 2025 alone, those controls already pushed the price of indium phosphide up a staggering 250%. Yeah, 250%.
This creates a complete policy paradox for the US. The goal is straightforward: reduce reliance on Chinese-made data center components to secure our AI infrastructure. But the supply chain reality bites back. Those intended American corporate winners, they depend on raw materials over which China has significant leverage. If Beijing tightens those raw material export controls further, the Western suppliers could end up constrained by the exact same supply chain risk the policy was originally designed to escape. Talk about a catch-22.
Chinese officials have already signaled they're watching closely and that a response would follow. So, to navigate this incredibly delicate situation, analysts suggest the FCC might steer future purchasing through a sort of middle path. They could restrict only new, next-generation imports, exempt non-Chinese suppliers already operating, and essentially give Western suppliers the critical runway they need to scale up before older hardware needs replacing. It's really about steering the ship gradually rather than just pulling the emergency brake.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, the next tech battlefield.
This entire transceiver situation connects to a much bigger, much more consequential story about the global AI build-out. Companies like Microsoft and Wipro are pouring enormous resources into helping enterprises deploy AI at scale. But that software scaling assumes the physical layer beneath it, the networking, the data centers, is both trustworthy and available at a reasonable cost. Washington is making it explicitly clear here. Infrastructure trust and cost are not just footnotes to the AI boom. They are the absolute foundation of national security.
As a vital economic indicator, what we are learning is that the tech war is shifting. The next phase of US-China tech competition looks less like a flashy fight over the newest AI models and increasingly like a grinding battle over the invisible, unglamorous physical infrastructure most people never even think about.
So, as the US and China fight over the invisible plumbing of AI, who will ultimately control the precarious supply chain of our digital future? That is the billion-dollar question we have to leave you with today, as we wait to see exactly how Beijing responds to this new frontier of tech competition and whether Western manufacturers can actually scale fast enough to meet the challenge. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep an eye on the invisible infrastructure and always keep questioning how our digital world is actually built.